Welcome to the Immanuel Network podcast. My name is Ryan Fullerton. I'm the lead pastor of the Immanuel Baptist Church here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm here with my co-host.
Matthew DeLauder, lead pastor of Immanuel Community Church. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're here. The Immanuel Network exists to help pastors plant and cultivate healthy churches for a global harvest. And the goal of the Immanuel Network podcast is just to do that, to help to plant and cultivate healthy churches for a global harvest. One of the efforts that we spend a lot of time on each year is the Immanuel Network Summit. And the Immanuel Network Summit is essentially a time when we gather leaders and their teams for a time of teaching, panels, discussions, breakouts, fellowship. And we really just try to create intersections in people's lives where team leaders can begin to network and work together and really establish the kind of relationships that will bless them for years. This year's Immanuel Network Summit, our topic is really going to be what the Immanuel Network Summit is aimed to do. Our topic is going to be fellowship. And we're going to be thinking about fellowship, not just in terms of a potluck at the end of a Sunday service, but fellowship that's theological, that's missional, that's relational, and that's financial. Fellowship, like the fellowship we have with God, where we share one life and one cause. One of the things we're hoping to do in this podcast is to really help the leaders of the Immanuel Network, the pastors and their teams who are going to come to the Immanuel Network Summit. We want to help them use the summit well. And one of the partners we've seen use the summit particularly well is Ramny Perez. Ramny is the founding pastor of Fordham Community Church, located in his beloved the Bronx. And he's also a council member who leads the Immanuel Network. Ramny, welcome to the podcast.
An honor to be with you guys. An honor to be able to chop it up and to think through how to serve our Immanuel Network churches and how to serve our members, how to use the network in a way that's strategic. So, honor to be here.
It's great to have you here. Well, just tell us, Ramny, you've thought about this very intentionally, so I don't want to get in the way. I just want to ask you the question, how have you used the Immanuel Network Summit to equip your team, to lead your team, and to really bless the local church efforts there in the Bronx?
Yeah, certainly. I think to be able to really answer the particulars of how we do what we do, let me just tell you a little bit about the nature of who our church is. Mm-hmm. And then I think that helps inform why we made the decisions we made. So the Lord really has grown FCC through a lot of people who were either not very well churched, meaning they had some level of exposure, maybe when they were young, mostly in like a charismatic Pentecostal church that had very little doctrinal or gospel-centered formation, or people who had no church background really at all, just sort of a reality of a lot of scatteredness and a lot of conflicting ways of thinking, worldviews, that when people get saved, they get to know the Lord Jesus Christ, they begin to get integrated into FCC. It's really the first time they've been in a church like ours. And so we began to realize, like, this time, like I initially would go by myself, then I went with my wife, then we decided we really need to use this strategically as a way that could give an exposure to the people we're trying to develop, we think could be like servant leaders in our church, and give them an exposure that would really cement or strengthen their own faith. Two, would help them to be exposed to other people doing ministry in different contexts, or different doing church in different contexts in a way that we thought could bless FCC as it sort of builds them up. And then three, our goals were like, we want to build our relationships with one another. And so we thought with those goals, we let's all sleep in the same place. And so we always get like an Airbnb that's large enough for the team we're bringing. We build in sort of reflection times on the evenings when the day is done, and people scatter in different breakouts, and everybody comes. We tell them in the very beginning, like, hey, we need you to come and bring a report of what you thought, how you're processing that. And honestly, like, those times have been the most formative we found, and the most impactful. So we've used it as another tool to develop leaders, essentially,
Yeah.
or to strengthen and mature the everyday member. Even if they're never going to hold a particular role, they're just going to be a stronger member of a local church. That's how we've really approached bringing our teams.
Yeah. So Ramney, I know we said we kind of wanted to start kind of big picture, general, and then kind of move to maybe even kind of nuts and bolts specifics how you're gonna pull this off. So maybe like more of a general question. In the past years, as you're bringing people to the summit, what are some like general takeaways that you're hearing from them when they come to the summit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think like seeing believers who are flesh and blood doing church planting or missions work and suffering in that process. Often I've found uh, even causes just everyday sort of saints who are we're trying to develop to be servant hearted in the local body to ask serious questions or in sort of interact at a serious level with their own faith, even to the point of like, man, I got to be better in my marriage. Like I've been amazed at how those kind of conversations trickle down to like, how do I walk with the Lord faithfully in everyday life?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're seeing like, missionaries are not these sort of alien kind of beings that drop down from heaven. They're everyday saints. They're interacting with them, pastors and church planters. They're hearing those dynamics. We found that it really helps them to wrestle with counting the cost of what it means to be a believer, really in every aspect of life. Um, so that's a big aspect of it. I think what church is and what is that we're trying to accomplish in church and the mission of the church and in church planting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the nature of like New York City and the Bronx where we are,
Yep.
it's very demanding on families, or could be the very demanding on families. And it's one of those things where New York City is like the kind of place you never forget about. But it's often hard for some to build deep roots in there. So like people
Yeah.
will move to Miami, but they're still talking about New York while
Yeah.
they're in Miami. It's what I mean. So like you don't forget about this place, but sometimes it's hard to build deep roots here. And we've had it's been amazing to see people talk about like, how do I actually plant my life here as a byproduct of seeing other people do hard things in different places.
Mm.
Um, so those are some major areas I've noticed. But also like what is a reformed church in terms of theologically, like, in a Baptistic church, um, how does it all fit together? Like you can see the light bulbs going off, and like, oh, that's why we do what we do. So those are some of the large themes I think we've seen in our context.
So just a follow up, as you're getting people to kind of rethink like or think for the first time what church is like in the Bronx, what would be like some preconceived notions of like what church is, or either maybe from experience, like is this a fair? I know you said some charismatic background, but is there like some Roman Catholic background as well, where we go to mass. It's not really a community. Even as we're talking about fellowship, it's not really a community, but like maybe some Roman Catholic churches have a little more community, but it's mostly I go to mass, I leave. Like
Both.
yeah. I was just curious, maybe just diving a little deeper there, how people are having to rethink about church.
Yeah, it's interesting. So like I think what you're describing is right. Like there's sort of on the people who have some level of church exposure, it's usually like very chaotic what they've experienced, or very little gospel in a way that forms the whole person. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's this family that's at our church, and I remember when they first came, and the wife was wrestling with participating in the Lord's Supper because of something she was struggling with. And I remember walking her through the only thing that qualifies you to have access to God is that Christ died on the cross to bear all of your sin, and that is your righteousness. And trusting in that and walking consistently in repentance in light of that truth is the truth that allows you to come and be welcomed to the table. And her response to me was, she had been in church for, I would say, at least 10 years up to that point. Her response to me was, I'd never heard that. I'd never heard the gospel applied. So on the one
Hmm.
hand, that's what I mean. Like even
Yep.
our most church, just the gospel was not the key central thing, and neither
Hmm.
did it form all of life, or the way of thinking. It other things became central, right? Dress this way, and don't do this, don't do that, and a lot of hype and chaoticness, sort of on the Sunday morning reality. And
Hmm.
then the others are like there's another dynamic to that, which is there's a lot of folks, and there's a generational aspect to this, but who um, for whom it is just an event or a moment,
Hmm.
not being a part of an organism or a body to which you are inseparably tied, because you are now
Hmm.
inseparably tied to Christ. And
Hmm.
so whenever there's a disagreement with a person or a challenge with a person, it means I'm
Hmm.
ghosting and I'm just going to disappear.
Yep.
Or early on in FCC's life, I remember we as elders felt like the first 3 years had to routinely teach on being in Sunday gathering matters. That is basic Christian discipline.
Yep.
And so yeah, so uh, the dynamic of what a church is, it took a while to build. I think the network building some of our like our more mature, higher level leaders, and them then trickling that out. I've seen how now it's created a different kind of body, a healthier body. Like we don't have to address that anymore. Like, hey, Sunday gathering matters because everybody's there as a regular pattern, and and now you can tell who's in danger when they're not there very clearly. So
Yep.
One of the things that I just love that you're saying is the way in which the summit is really building into your people what to expect in a reformed Baptistic church. Because, and it strikes me that when we read the New Testament, we're often hearing the Apostle Paul say things like, as I taught in all the churches, or I passed on to you the traditions that I saw. And as much as we see that when we read the New Testament, it is amazing to me how just one glimpse of another church doing it has a massive ability to imprint that and encourage us in our souls.
yeah.
It creates a plausibility structure rather than just being this weird little band in Kansas or in New York City or in Louisville, Kentucky. I begin to see that I'm sharing in something that is shared by saints really all over the place. And then, of course, once we get to do a deep dive into church history, we realize, oh, people have been doing these things for hundreds of years. This is not new or novel. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that I just think of the one weekend I spent at a healthy church early on in my pastoral ministry, even though I was literally there for 48 hours, just seeing how a church was conducting themselves according to the Bible gave me tremendous hope that I shouldn't just see some weird passages in the scripture and think, I wonder how those apply. But I actually ought to trust that they could be applied in the church I was a part of. And that's exactly what we're aiming for, is to sort of say, hey, this is happening in New Orleans, this is happening in Kansas, this is happening in New York, this is happening wherever people come to take the scriptures seriously. We see these kind of patterns repeating themselves.
Man. Yeah, and it's amazing to see the neurological pathways that get connected. Like just the bulbs going off when you see, you know, different contexts doing similar kinds of things in the ways that they do it in their context. You know what I mean? So like um a expositional preaching in every church, though the expositor might exposit it in his own flavor, you know, or
Hmm.
congregational singing, but it's being done in the flavor of that community. Like I'm seeing all of those things being connected, meaningful membership, you know, all of those things. So, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Remy, because I do feel like when you come to the summit, the way I guess I can't remember if the council or Andy and Ryan can organize who preaches, but you're getting expositional preaching, but you're definitely getting it with a different flavor each time, which I always enjoy and appreciate. One question I did want to ask you is, since it's a leadership development goal that you're doing, is this a broad invite or is this only like a specific invite? And maybe a follow up question with that, have you seen, could you give an example of somebody you've seen go from like not leader, but going to the summit and then becoming deacon, elders, something like that? Yep.
No, that's a great question. So, um, it's morphed as we've become more formal in some of the things we do internally. But early on, it was uh, who are people who have the potential to be influential, and then who
Mm-hmm.
are people who are already leading in some way, and is who we kind of prioritize bringing, because part of what we do as well is like it costs a lot of money. We are in a economically challenged area, so our church kind
Mm-hmm.
of subsidizes
Yep.
half of the cost. There is some cost, but we kind of subsidize half of the
Yep.
cost. Um, and so we kind of invite as elders those kind of individuals. Since then, we've developed something we call the Timothy and Priscilla Lab. I know you brothers have different
Yep.
dynamics of that, which is a year-long disciple making training. And what we do is first dibs goes to people in that cohort. So like right now we have about 22 in this year's cohort, and so they're like the first dibs of invite goes to them. And if for whatever reasons, usually we can only do 10 to 15 people because we can't find an Airbnb big enough, and we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have two different places. We want to be one place if possible, because we really find that that's facilitated the conversations after, and the community after, and the meals, all of that dynamic. We found that's really been helpful to all be together. And um, so we'll pool from there now, and those are the people who we're trying to invest in to be like possible deacons or elders at FCC in the future. The challenge we're facing now is that some of the people who've gone in the past are eager to go again. We're like, well, we got to expose it to new people. We're always trying to rotate it because of how we use it. So and then there are some staples that are always going to come. There's a sister Hannah and Tony who
I
they
was
just get
about to mention
immediate
Hannah.
dibs. Yeah, they're immediate dibs because they were at Immanuel, and they were uh, students at Boyce. So like we view it almost as a sustainability care for them. Like
Yeah.
they've counted a significant cost in moving, and it encourages and blesses them. So.
Okay, so in your case, Ramney, and not everyone has to do this the first year, but you're literally budgeting. You're literally at the budgeting level for the network, so you're thinking about it as year long. Then you're choosing and hand selecting who's going there. And I'll just throw in one little tidbit on that. I have seen it where guys have tried to use this summit as a time to spend time with the most troubled member of their church. And I would not recommend that. You should spend time with the most troubled member of your church, but I think it's a lot different than leadership development. I think you're going to wind up distracted in that
Mhm,
kind of situation. So, not that everyone's got to have their life together, but you are talking about people that you think probably can handle even more weight that they're currently receiving, and you're really trying to help them create the culture that's going to really influence your whole church. And one of the ways I view pastoral success is once I've taught on it so much that if I didn't teach on it for 2 or 3 years, it's still there in the culture, then
mm,
then something has gone well. And I think
mhm,
that's what you're trying to do is you're trying to take those leaders that are going to help shape that culture at the
mhm.
church. So then you're picking from your Priscilla and your Timothy labs. Then you got everyone together in Airbnb. They've all done to breakouts, and you're the leader, Ramney. Tell me about those conversations. Like, what are you doing? Well, how are you maximizing that time in the airport, in the Airbnb, in the weeks that follow? What kind of things are you doing? You just asking them to go and just interacting ad hoc, or how do you do that?
So that's a great question. So what we normally do is like beforehand, we'll say, hey, um, we kind of create an internal schedule for, hey, we'll have lunch here, we'll have dinner here. We're gonna try and grab lunch with the folks from Harvest here. Like we'll have, and then we'll have our debrief time. Usually in the evening, 9 p.m. or so. 9:30 p.m. once we get back. Um, and we try to make it like an intentionally fun time. So one this past summit, like one of the sisters really was interested in getting ice cream, and so two of the guys ran out for ice cream, and then it was like we're gonna have this debrief time with a late night of ice cream, and then I just ask, hey, what stood out to you? How are you processing? um and I try to kind of stir the pot in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
um and honestly, like I think I can say this with as clear conscience as possible. Like it's been spiritual in every sense, almost every year. Like I think the Spirit of God has been at work in those conversations in like a powerful way. Like oftentimes, and I'm not even overstating this. There's been tears. There's been like just deep fellowship that's being like fermented. There's repentance. There's encouragement. There's acknowledgement of like 1 year, everybody just went around and was like, hey, I am so thankful for how you're serving FCC in this way, and just acknowledge the ways of, and it was just a lot of tears. And we go back and it's like, let's go to war together. That's how it feels like.
Amen.
And so I just intentionally try to stir the pot, and I try to create the expectation of, hey, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to have a conversation when we get back. And sometimes that takes like overcoming a little bit of tiredness and apathy. Like, a lot of the folks who we're bringing are not used to sitting through 4 or 5 sermons, 2 days, 3 days in a row, and then a breakout. So they are mentally done, like usually by 9:30 p.m. So I do have to do a little bit of like, hey guys, we're gonna do this. Let's all sit down. But once it gets going, it gets going. You know what I mean? Like the ball gets rolling in a way that's really helpful. Um, so my job normally is just to try to like stir the pot and make sure it happens.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's very
Yeah.
good.
So,
Remy, I got a follow up question right there. How do you manage networking with people that you've had relationships with in the past, and maybe even conversations that you're wanting to have with someone because, pastorally, you're in a place like, man, I could use some counsel here. Because, I even as I've been listening to you talk, I remember we used to be more intentional in bringing more people in the past. And I think I honestly got to a place where I may have dialed it back and how many people we invited, because I almost kind of felt overwhelmed at
mm,
sometimes at this, which y'all got a good idea of staying at the same place. I remember one summit, I had people in 3 different places and had to pick them up that morning and had to like plan out, hour and a half of travel time, just picking everyone up. But yeah, as I'm listening here, I'm even trying to think, if you needed to have more time yourself for people to kind of pour into you, counsel you, would you ever set up someone else to kind of be in that lead position? I'm even trying to think constructively for myself in this, because I think the reason I've dialed back is because maybe in past years I'm like, man, I just need to go and just and be there and not really lead while I'm there. Yeah, I don't know. You have
yeah.
any thoughts there?
No, I think that's a great point. Like, and I think depending on your constitution and how you're built out, that impacts that in my thinking in that question. But like, I think like most of the years, this hasn't happened every year, but most of the years, one of our elders, Paul, he's like administratively gifted, and it's just easier to travel with him because he's just gonna like organize, he's gonna plan things, he's gonna like have these things, and it's just easy. Now there's been 1 or 2 years where he hasn't been able to come. I think like that was the case last year, so it felt like more of that administrative aspect was on my shoulders. um, but then what I've learned is like, if you ask those that are coming to shoulder some of that, people will take it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And so um, just kind of saying, hey, I need you guys to help me out here in these ways, because oftentimes I'm also doing something in the network, like, you know what I mean, like, whether it's hosting or
yeah,
participating in a breakout or something like. So
yeah,
I'm not going to be able to kind of like handle every administrative aspect of managing 10 to 15 people. So I usually try to like just, hey, would you help out here? And that's worked out pretty good. I also think like not bringing people who have the potential for leadership or a little bit greater maturity helps in that. Because
yeah,
if you bring like brand new believers or like, the other dynamic, then they're going to have less capacity to kind of pitch in
yeah,
from that aspect. Um, I haven't used the network, and this is what I mean by personal constitution and build out, as a
yeah,
place for like, hey, I'm coming crawling, I need counsel.
yeah,
I think by God's grace, I haven't been in that place on that
yeah,
date. Like, maybe if I'm in a different place, I would use it differently.
yeah,
But also the way I'm wired, it doesn't like, I would call, I would reach out prior to.
yeah.
I don't
You're looking at
It's
things from
not
two
a
different.
personal struggle in that regard. Yeah,
Yeah,
to use it that way.
and I could
But
throw.
yeah,
Let me throw something out for. I mean, first of all, there are going to be different retreats for different purposes, and there are times where we're
yeah.
talking about the way Matthew's describing, and of course, we're welcome to have anyone come visit us at any time and hang out and just fall apart on the couch. But the other thing I would say is, as busy as the network is, the summit is, We actually have also left those afternoons largely open, and that's been intentional. And I know, Ramney, sometimes your team will go and do some Kentucky things that aren't exactly New York things while they're here in town. And I would just encourage pastors who need some refreshment, some encouragement, some counsel, a shoulder to cry on, a mind to get counsel from, maybe to break away from their teams during that time and really get time with pastors. We try to make all of the Immanuel pastors available during those times. But honestly, as a network, it's really not about just connecting with the Immanuel Baptist Church pastors, but I would suggest making a call ahead, like a week or two before the summit, to an old friend and saying, hey, can we get lunch? Can we get breakfast? Can we get coffee? And, I'm going to spend a lot of my time investing in my team, but I probably need to take some time invest in myself. I think that's super important. And I think it can be used both ways in that situation.
Man, I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying. Like, um, I don't mean to imply that that's not worthy using it the way you're describing, Matthew. I just, um, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not just like, I need counsel. It's just like, man, I can't remember the last time me and Jay Haynes had a conversation. It's just, yeah, and I'm thankful for the time that y'all have built into that. I think that's really helpful, just to be able to, even if you bring a team, to have that freedom to say, hey, we're having our debriefings and talks now, but during this section, I do have friendships and networks that I've built with people here, and whether it's counsel or help, or just a friendly conversation, just catching up in here and like, man, your kid's 15 now. Last time I saw him, he was 10. Like what's going, those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that is so important about the network, and one of the things that we can easily let slip if we're not careful, is that we have built things so that it is aimed to be a relational network. That's one of the goals. That's one of the distinctives. But relationships for busy men are easy to let slip. And so it's no waste of time, to my mind, just to catch up, just to hug someone, just to sit with them, to hear about how their kids are doing. That is a massive thing. And it creates the context for if there's need to speak about more serious matters at different times too. Ramney, one of the things you've done over the years is you and Harvest Church in New Orleans have a relationship. That's a relationship I love, because it's a relationship not between Immanuel Baptist Church and a daughter church, but it's a relationship between Immanuel Baptist Church, daughter church, Fordham, and a granddaughter church, Harvest, which was planted by Immanuel Community Church in New Orleans. So if you're following the family lines there, tell us about how you guys interact through the year, but then tell us also about what it looks like to connect during the summit.
Yeah. I mean, the Lord has been kind in just developing a sweet friendship with Andrew. So through the year, he and I are texting last night as the Knicks are playing in the NBA Cup game, and he's talking to me about Tyler Kolek and how he's showing out, and I'm texting back. So our love of, like, just a friendship of our love of basketball, and so I would say Andrew and I, by God's grace, have built a sweet friendship where we can text and call and challenge and encourage one another, and keep each other's families in prayer, pastoral decisions in prayer. So that's really been the bedrock out of which the relationship between our churches has also begun to flourish. So they're coming now in January. One of their elders, Connor, is bringing a team to serve with the launch of our ESL ministry for the spring semester, in January. And through the years, what it's looked like is we've gone down and served with them, helping do a soccer clinic. Most of our people are either Black or Dominican. Not a lot of soccer players. We're baseball players, football players, basketball players, but we did our best. Immanuel Community Church was there, actually, and you guys have some pretty good players, actually. Or they've come up and served with us. Basically, once a year, one of us has either gone down or come up, in terms of teams. And it's been sweet because it's not a mother-daughter relationship. It's a sort of like a sister-sister, brother-brother relationship, who are mutually encouraging. We pray for one another as we pray for other Immanuel Network churches. But I think that's been sweet to see repetitive faces, to know what's happening, So, for example, they got the building, we're cheering them on in our church, even as we're longing for a building of our own, but we can rejoice in the Lord's provision of them. So it's been, and then we're in similar kinds of contexts, like they're in a predominant sort of black neighborhood, historic black neighborhood there in New Orleans, and we're in a black and brown neighborhood here, and so the challenges could be similar, you know what I mean, some of those dynamics. So it's also kind of nice to know and understand that, those challenges. Um, and then during the network, like we'll make sure there's one during those free times. We have like whoever they bring and whoever we bring, we want to try and get together and do some level of lunch or fellowship, or just being able to interact at a relational level with one another. And so we always kind of carve that time out. Like there's been a couple staples of during those breaks, like, Ryan, we'll try and do, I don't know if it's appropriate to say in this context, but a cigar, something usually with you and a couple of other folks who you'll pull together, Evan or something, Dom and Evan will always, and that's the, like, our team can come or not come, but I'm always going to build that out.
Yeah.
And then with them, we view it like that. Like, let's try and carve out some time that our church can connect with theirs intentionally. Just because we've seen it as a great blessing. I mean,
Yeah.
they are not a wealthy, large church, but they've like financially supported in our building campaign. Like it's been like that, like a very mutual, encouraging relationship that we're very thankful for.
And let me just say to anybody who's listening, when you come to the network summit, it can be a little bit overwhelming to think, oh, I need to make relationships with the network. But
Mm,
nobody can make relationships with the network. You're much better off to try to make relationships with one or two churches, one or two
Mm-hmm.
missionaries, and just build a couple of things strong. And maybe if you're feeling like, well, I got left out of some of those relationships, well, there's a few other people like that too. And if you connect with them, you can really build something really strong. Because of course, there was no plans to develop a relationship between Fordham and Harvest. That just emerged in the kind of cross pollination that we're aiming just by getting people in the same room.
mm,
And so I would just encourage the guys to come, not with a prayer to get to know the network, but just to forge some deep relationships with a missionary or two, another church or two, and to really kind of strengthen those relationships. That will be strong. That will be strength enough over the years to really help a church along.
Yeah,
mm,
and I think those trips definitely serve in that connection. Not just the trips to like the summit, but the trips that you are doing together. And Remy, I'd love to hear what you have to say here. Maybe some other ideas on like increasing, like just not just your connectivity as the pastor, but your church to either this church or that missionary. Because one issue I've seen with us, having been down here 11 years, I feel like in 11 years with the transients of New Orleans, I've pastored maybe four different congregations, and just having to constantly repitch, oh, we're part of the Immanuel Network. Here's the missionaries we pray for. And one thing I could see, like when we were able to take a trip back in like 2019, 2018 to be with JP Stokes and get to do some teaching with him. I felt like we had a strong connection with Stokes. But then 2020 hit. We whatever trip we were planning on doing that year got canceled. Then we got in a building project, and all our energy was there. And then I felt like I turned around somewhere around like 2023, 2024, and I was just like, man, I know these missionaries and I know these partners, but I feel like as much as our church has changed over the years, the connection is just not there anymore. So even this past year, we've been talking about like how can we subsidize, like, so these are the people we're already praying for,
mm,
already financially given to, but still, even with doing that pretty regularly, the connection feels somewhat low.
mm.
I don't know if you have any other ideas there. Like, I guess one last thing I'd say that we did have Andrew and Stephanie Wilkinson come in and to our VBS this past year, which was
Mm.
super helpful because they'd heard that name for a long time and they were able to see them. But yeah, do you have any ideas? Because I imagine I could be wrong. I think cities in general are transient, but New Orleans is also a very transient city, and just like how you kind of maintain that level of connection with a
Yeah.
transient congregation.
That's a great question. Here's where my brain goes, and I'm gonna
Hmm.
try and answer that question. Like, so you know this, Matthew. Like, as a planting a church, you'll have a whole host of teams from all kinds of different churches over the years. Partner churches, and I'm just like, I'm very grateful for all of those. I've been thankful for how they have served us. But it's kind of nice to know where a team is
Yeah.
in every sense of the word,
Hmm.
and it's just so much more freeing, and having Andrew preach at FCC is just so much more freeing.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like, I think I have come to deeply value uh, going against the standard way of partnering between churches together, which is like in the context of missions, which is like defined by time period. Hey, we'll
Hmm.
we'll partner with you for 3 years or 5 years or whatever. Versus like this is just a standing relationship that leads to gospel multiplication. It doesn't need to mean financial commitment. But it ought to mean um, a level of continuity and of gospel investment that is not transactional.
Yeah.
And so I think what Ryan was saying earlier is like cultivating some, maintaining wide. You're not going to be able to go deep with everybody, but going deep with some,
Yeah.
uh, and being intentional in the going deep with some. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm noticing, like, especially depending on your level of staffing as a church and all these dynamics, like it's gonna really come to an element stewardship of the relationships that the lead pastor has, and then that trickles down and can
Hmm.
be cultivated deeply from there. um uh I heard someone say, like, the kingdom runs on the highways of relationship. And honestly, the more I'm doing ministry, it's just real. It's just true. Like, if the leadership isn't connecting with who you're supporting on a relational level, it's just really
Hmm.
hard for that to authentically trickle down to everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think the cultivation of personal relationships, what I'm finding, is the best place to steward that. So another way to put it is, I want to support friends and the work they're doing when they're doing good gospel work, and I want to do that for as long as I can without a clear sort of like, hey, we're doing this for this time. No, like, you guys are going to plant more churches, then let's just continue. I don't need to go to a different place or a different city for the sake of, finding new creative ways to expose our people to that. I find that's often what's happening rather than,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well, with that, Ramney, have y'all found an international spot or missionary that y'all really wanted to plug
we're,
into
we're,
and get
we're
behind in
we're
those ways?
trying. We're trying.
Oh,
So, like,
okay.
we supported Andrew and Stephanie,
Yeah.
and it's trying to steward that. When JP was in India, we were thinking of similarly, how do we do a trip out there? And JP came and preached at FCC. Um, then he transitioned. So I feel like it hasn't worked in the same way as with Harvest yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, which is okay. I think that's just
Hmm.
the dynamics of the realities of our current situation. But
Yeah.
that's what I hope to do. I hope to do
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean?
Let me
So
uh,
yeah.
let
Hmm.
me let me
That's good.
jump in and share a couple of thoughts in reaction to that. And then when I'm done, maybe each of you could share one final thought with brothers who are considering coming and just considering bringing their teams, and just maybe think a little bit about what might be most encouraging to them, whether they're at a very small church with low involvement or a larger church where they could plausibly, bring a big team or that kind of thing. A couple of things. One, I think, Matthew, one of the answers to your question, even in the midst of transients, because all three of us are in very transient contexts, and I think it's the reality that Immanuel thinks of itself as transient. It's starting to see itself as less transient now. But
Mm.
one of the things I've said for years is, you think you're in this very unique place of being a transient church, but you're not. And I'll read them like sections from a Todd Morikawa sermon to his transient church that's like had almost 80% turnover in 3 or 4 years, and just say, this is ministry in the modern world, and we need to learn how to deal with it. But anyway, in response to that, I think is, one, bring a team, because you want the relationships to be deeper than senior pastor to senior pastor. The more you can do that and make the relationships broader, the better you should. Two, one of the things we're working on, and actually we've had a lot of good counsel from Ramny on this front, is that we will be spending a lot of time at this particular summit not only articulating what the fellowship of the Immanuel Network looks like, but actually producing. I was in an editing meeting for about 2 hours yesterday, producing a document we hope to give to all of the churches that helps really articulate how to build out that fellowship. And then third, it really is our hope in the next year or so to hire an executive director, because essentially we've had Andy Morris overseeing the same network that's tripled at the same time that Immanuel Baptist Church has doubled in size. So we've got one guy doing a job that's essentially gotten 2 or 3 times larger. And so obviously we're dropping balls, and there's ways we need to grow. And one of the things we hope to do in that position is to provide more avenues to connect with missionaries, more avenues to connect with those who are, it's not every church has the resources to organize a short-term mission trip or that kind of thing, or to connect with a missionary. If we can provide some of that, we would love to. And then those relationships can take off from there. So anyway, lots to come. Lots has happened. Matthew, starting with you, what would you share just with any pastor who's thinking about coming in terms of bringing a team or making the most of the summit? And then Ramny, I'll hand that question over to you, and then we'll close.
Yeah, really just to put an exclamation mark on a lot of things that Ramny said. Like, we've been so blessed in the past. Like, even as he talks about Andrew Hannah and the relationship with Harvest Church, well, a lot of that started with just Andrew coming with us, along with Connor Hinton, who is also one of his fellow pastors, years back, coming with us to the Immanuel Network, having no clue other than what I had shared with them about how Immanuel Baptist in Louisville had sent us out. And so I think just to really put an exclamation mark on what Ramny said, who are like those potential leaders that you see? And it may just be one person, and that would be great. I mean, way to just come and spend time with them, because you're going to have conversations that are going to, be created by the things that you're hearing and talking about. No, really, no matter what stage you're at. I think that's one of the great things with the Immanuel Network growing, is you have so many people in different stages, whether it be in terms of revitalization or whether it be in terms of like church planning. So you got like us in New Orleans, been going at it for a decade now, and then you'll have people like Andrew Hannah, who's been going about 4 or 5 years, but they're also in the midst of buying their own church property. So like, I think that's what's great about the network. Is just that with it growing, there's so many other people that you can draw wisdom and counsel from. But yeah, I think just scale it to as what you can do. I think back in the day, back in my younger times, I felt like, man, I want to take as many people to the network as, and we had a blast, but there's things I could have done to plan it a lot better. Like examples like Ramney's giving, like, hey, just stay in one spot, just share an Airbnb together, travel together, and have a good plan while you're coming in, when you're going to meet, and really being. I think the last thing that something I want to do more this year is being really intentional with that space that y'all give. Maybe just to meet with brothers I haven't talked with in a while.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Ramny?
Yeah, I would echo. I mean, a lot of what I said is how we've tried to approach it, but I would echo something Matt said there. Like, start with what you're able to do. Like, I don't think you should have any pressure or expectation to do exactly what others are doing, especially if that's not yet where the congregation is. But I do think, like, if there's a couple of folks that you think they can influence the culture of the church you're at, and it would build deep relational sort of gospel community with them to spend that time. Like, do what you're able to do, and take those steps. And I think, like, I think if the Lord gives fruit and He delights to honor the work of His children, the faithfulness of His children, like, then you'll see that multiply and compound. I think of a brother in our church who leads our sound team now and is just about reached, I think, the level of, I'm trying to be intentional with my words because this is internal, but the level where we think he might be qualified for the diaconate. And I remember 3 years ago when we first brought him, I was like, okay, is this investment gonna get here? And it took a while, but growth isn't linear. And over time, we've just seen them mature and grow and take on more and mature in holiness. And we're like, okay, I think we as elders are now having that conversation. And but just kind of do what you're able to do. And I think over time, like you may be seeing more fruit because it becomes less dependent upon you and the whole congregation. Like the whole body now is able to do ministry to each other with greater capacity is the hope. So.
Well, I love that. And that really is the goal. The summit this year is normally we're focused, and this is still going to be focused on God, but normally we're focused out on the God who helps us in suffering. There's a sense in which this year we really are looking at what the New Testament says that we should be doing in these relationships. So exploring the idea of fellowship. We're going to be thinking about fellowship with God. We're going to be thinking about fellowship within the church. Johnny Atkinson has prepared a white paper that's going to turn into a sermon that I'm very excited, where he surveys the New Testament and shows all the ways the New Testament churches were united together. I love, Ramny, I think you mentioned this. In Acts chapter 4, you mentioned the word friends. In Acts chapter 4, when the first outburst of persecution comes, Peter gets back to the group to pray, and it says he gathered together with the friends. I love that. And that's really what the aim is. And there are some friends you see every day, and there's some friends you see once a year, but the goal is to create friendships where you really want to cheer one another on. You want to see each other's ministries grow, and you want to see each other make it all the way to heaven. That's our goal. So if you come alone this year, no problem. We want to befriend you. If you're able to bring one or two, that's wonderful too. But we do think here's some good ideas for building your team and really reinforcing the things that you're trying to teach Sunday by Sunday, that you're trying to model, and to be able to meet different practitioners who are at different stages. I was so excited. One of my goals for the Immanuel Network is these relationships like Harvest and Fordham, but another one is to create churches that are getting big enough and strong enough that they can actually begin to hire from elsewhere in the network. And we've just seen that with Dennis Anderson hiring Noah Drake to his church in Janesville. So super encouraging stuff happening there. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thanks for coming so regularly to the summit. Matt, the only misses when he has a child. And we're so glad for you guys, or when Annie has a child. We're so glad for each of you guys being there, and looking forward to having you invest again in the brothers and the sisters this year. So God bless.